Good morning, everyone. I am Aaron Blumberg, Swiftland's Continuing Education Coordinator, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Kickin' It Old School Low-Tech Solutions in STEAM. We have a wonderful learning opportunity ready for you this morning with Ryan and Hillary Shore of Full Steam Ahead. Full Steam Ahead is an enrichment program that integrates the arts and sciences through high-quality, engaging instruction with cutting-edge technology. Learning is hands-on, project-based, and very fun. They help students become creative, fearless problem solvers, possessing the skills to confidently tackle the future. Please welcome Ryan and Hillary and enjoy their webinar this morning. Ryan and Hillary?
Hi Hello, everybody. Good morning. How are we doing?
So welcome to our webinar, Kickin' It Old School, Low-Tech Solutions in STEAM.
And for your daily dose of irony here, we'll be presenting on a high-tech platform that was impossible to do 15 years ago. So please enjoy our old school presentation with our new school presentation software.
So first of all, we'll just talk about some goals, things we're going to try to accomplish this morning. So first of all, we will give you a little bit of a background about STEAM. You're going to make an argument that quality STEAM activities and learning doesn't need to be surrounded by expensive technology.
We also want to give you guys some ideas and some activities for planning and implementing STEAM activities in your library. So we want to give you things that you can take home with you.
And then also we want you to be able to advocate the need for STEAM activities, kind of put together a set of statements and arguments for folks to be able to show the importance for STEAM in your library setting.
And finally, we want to help you create a vetting process for quality STEAM activities. And one of the things we're going to talk about is, just the abundance of ideas and activities out there. And, of course, with that comes an abundance of lousy ideas. So we want to help you, distinguish between the good and the not so good, and the ones that'll work for you, most efficiently, most effectively.
So before we get started, just a little bit about us. So my husband, Ryan, and I, we started Full Steam Ahead. It's an extracurricular enrichment program focusing on the arts and sciences. We do mini camps, we do after-school programs for kids, and we integrate STEM with the arts.
And just a little more about us and our qualifications. There's pictures of us right there, acting goofy as usual. And here's a whole bunch of our kids from one of our winter break camps.
Also acting goofy.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So my wife over here, this is Hillary Shore. She's the co-founder with me, the music guru here at Full Steam Ahead. She taught in the public schools for 8 years, K-5 music, all those years. And her specialty is in music curriculum development and instruction. And for all those years and continuing on today, she's a statewide leader in music education on assessment projects and curriculum design projects all over Florida.
Thanks. And then my husband is Ryan Shore. He is the co-founder and STEM guru here at Full Steam Ahead. He's been teaching in the public school system for 7 years before we started Full Steam Ahead. And he's great at developing STEAM curriculum, designing it. He also won the Golden Apple in 2014. Woo! And
for something completely unrelated to STEAM.
Teaching kids how to argue. Debate, yes. And this is our kid. This is Joey and Sam. And as you'll kind of know as we go along, Ryan and I really like to have fun in our learning and our education process. We think we're funny. I don't know if anyone else does, but
we got Aaron to laugh once or twice.
Yeah, there we go. But we like to have everything be fun and hands-on with the kids, and so that's definitely something we try to do in our webinars as well. So we like to hear from you and hear what you're thinking. So feel free if you want to use the agree and disagree buttons up in the top with things we're saying. And
those are right up there, right above where that arrow is.
Yeah.
You can raise your hand, you can agree, you can disagree.
And definitely feel free to type in questions in the chat box. Since there are two of us, while one of us is talking, the other one can try to be getting you the answer to some questions. So let's try to keep it as interactive and as fun as possible.
And the more interactive it is, the more we're all going to get out of this, just like any learning environment. And just before we start, one thing we always love to do is just kind of gauge our audience. This is always something that you want to do with your students as well. In any learning environment, you want to understand what their background knowledge is, what they know, so you know how to best teach them. So we're asking you guys to just kind of give yourselves a rating from 1 to 5 in terms of what is your experience level with integrating STEAM activities in your library. So a 1 would be you've never done anything. This is kind of your first tiptoe into the deep end. And a 5 would be this is something that you do regularly. You consider yourself an expert in STEAM integration in libraries. So yeah, type that in the box. Thank you guys so much for doing that. Oh, awesome.
All right. Very good.
Interact. Oh, awesome group.
Perfect. Okay, we got a 4. Very nice.
And Marie, we're asking you what to do here,
guys. Nice. All right. So I'd say mostly between about a 1 and a 3. That's perfect.
And that helps us a lot, just to let us know, or that gives us an idea of where to go from here. Yes, first time I think so. Robotics. Well, unfortunately, we left the robotics out of this one because it's low tech. But I do love our robotics. We have robotics teams as well.
Cool, very nice.
All right, so getting back to it, what is STEAM? And likely you've heard of it, but just in case you haven't, and we kind of have a different definition anyway. It is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math traditionally. Music. But since we are an advocate for the arts, we include music in there, so we could call it STEAM. But it's much more than just that too. It is it's a way to combine multiple disciplines. And it's a way to encourage and build creativity in kids, problem-solving skills, critical thinking, perseverance, confidence, and knowledge. And I think without those pieces there, then we're not really getting to the heart of STEAM.
It's pretty much like a mindset, in addition to combining actual disciplines. It helps kids, just like it says in the green box, try new things, explore things that they might not have done before, and not worry about failure. That's one of the main things that we try to teach the kids. You've got to fail, and you've got to make mistakes and persevere through stuff, in order to really accomplish some great things. So that's the STEAM mindset. So now, what does STEAM look like? Now, these are just a couple pictures from our program, and there's a lot happening in here. But I mean, as an example, you see everything from Legos and little bits down there in the bottom, to up in the top left corner, we have someone playing a song on the ukulele while doing a hula hoop. Harder than you might think, or as hard as you think. But it's getting kids to think outside of the box, invent and try new things and different ways to solve problems.
So what does STEAM look like in a library setting? And we give you 4 different options here. We give you 4 different maker spaces. And we're big advocates for the term and the use of maker spaces. Although, we also want to make it clear that, maker spaces can look very differently depending on your intended purpose, depending on your library setup, depending on the amount of space, your budget. And so looking at these 4 here, think to yourself, which of these 4 maker spaces would I most likely set up in my library? How would STEAM look in my library? Would it be, this looks more like just a table where they brought out some technology and are allowing kids and groups of kids to tinker and play and work on activities. This looks more scattered across a wider range, and it looks like there's more permanent fixtures here. Here we've got a makerspace, a dedicated space in the corner of a library, which looks high tech. It looks wide open. It looks great for influencing creativity and encouraging problem solving skills. And then this one looks more like a warehouse full of high tech tools and gadgets. So we want you to just take a second to think to yourself, what would it most likely look like in your library? And that's something we're going to kind of harp on as we go, not just in this presentation, but in future ones as well.
And if you want to, you can type in the chat box, which one, top left corner, top right, which one you think. Or if you want to get a little techie here, you can use the draw tool. We'll turn it on so that if you guys want to, you can circle or put a little mark on the screen to show us which makerspace you think is most realistic for you right now and just beginning. And maybe if you already have a makerspace or a classroom where you would plan to do STEAM activities, where you are now and where you want to go from that. So I'll give you just a couple seconds. Someone on the top left, something pretty mobile. Okay.
Kind of in between here.
Right. Okay. Oh, cool. That the star for the it being in between the bottom two pictures, that's a pretty cool place to be. I mean, that's a lot of technology and a lot of building stuff. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. But I think it's pretty realistic that the ones on the top are something that would be in a library.
Yeah, Chris, that's always going to be an issue. We have that issue as well. Space considerations and maker spaces can be mobile. It
For
can
sure.
absolutely be something that you pack up and clean up, and there's no trace of it after the work is done. So yeah, and Chris, that's exactly right, and that's totally fine.
All right, cool. So moving on to our next slide, getting set up.
So, we kind of want to share with you most of the low-tech tools that we heavily rely on in our makerspace. Now, we use a lot of technology as well, but we do many, many, many low-tech activities, low-tech makerspace lessons. And so we put together this list just for your reference here that shows things that we use all the time. And then I put a star next to things that we really get tons of mileage out of. I mean, things that we reuse over and over and over again in a million different ways. You can see Legos is starred up there. And as we work down the list, we have styrofoam. If you're not using styrofoam for activities, you are missing out. Combine that with a styrofoam cutter, a hot wire cutter. Google it; it'll change your life. It's amazing.
So it's really fun.
It's the kids love it, and it's a great scalable activity. We have kindergartners that use them, all the way up through 12th graders that use them. They're safe for the most part, as long as you're careful. And you can make really amazing things pretty quickly. Hot glue is just essential. Tape, all kinds of tape. Popsicle sticks, you can build almost anything using popsicle sticks. Paper, you need tons of different paper. Cardboard, what's nice about cardboard and styrofoam, you can recycle these things. It's always great to have these things on hand. And chances are you might even have them on hand already. If you don't, you can start a little collection of these things. Rubber bands, plates, cups, bowls, those are things we use over and over and over and over again.
And one thing that I also do want to draw your attention to, you see that we have Legos up there as the building material. Legos are not inexpensive for the most part. There's definitely a difference between low tech and low budget. While they often go hand in hand, they don't always. So some of these things, while it might be a bit of an while it might be a bit of an investment to buy a set of Legos or Connects, they'll go a long way, and you don't need a lot of technology to support it.
So just to give you an idea of this is our space here, and never mind that it looks well used. It is. I mean, it's in a constant state of disarray because we have 100+ kids a week coming through, and just building and creating. But just to kind of point out, some of the stuff we use, some of the organization we use to keep us sane and the kids sane. This is just kind of your office supplies here. We have this wall of paper hidden behind some other stuff.
The cookies keep me sane.
The cookies keep us sane. And there's actually my son's truck. We were fixing that. Over here, we have these bins just full of different building materials, craft supplies and yarn and string and tape. And we've got popsicle sticks and a variety of different balls and all kinds of stuff. All these things, it actually can be a substantial initial investment, but it makes life a lot easier in the long run when you have these things on hand. Instead of having to go out and buy new things every time you plan a new activity, having these things ready to go will make a big difference. This is more of our tools, and it's mostly low tech stuff here, as a matter of fact. But the hot knife and the hot wire cutters, we use those all the time, and this is a lot of the stuff we use for some of our bigger projects too. Here's a couple more pictures of our space. Never mind the mess. We use styrofoam all over the place. On the left there, you see this was actually a styrofoam art project. So those are works in progress. We have a styrofoam art contest that we're doing in the month of January. And it's kind of hard to tell what this is down here, but it's a little arcade made of styrofoam. That's a little race car video game. There's a Pac-Man video game. It's awesome. It's really cool. The kids absolutely are loving it, and just having this stuff allows for so many different activities.
All right, so starting to get to the heart of it now, what makes a quality STEAM activity? A couple things. You want there to be a great deal of scalability. You want to be able to get the little kids as well as the older ones, including the kids that have a high interest in STEAM and engineering and building, and the kids that are sort of apathetic to it. You want to be able to really bring them in. So it's got to be highly engaging.
And we're going to talk more about scalability towards the end of the presentation, because that's something that, as you design these activities, as you come up with these activities, or as you use ours, that's something that's really important. The nature of what we do, you're going to end up with kids of different ages, kids of different ability levels, and kids you don't always know. So that's what makes scalability so important.
Right. So then, you want to make sure that it relates to those STEAM skills, keeping the kids involved and, developing them and encouraging lots of different, aspects of their growth and their character, not only the content that you're presenting. So low entry level, high ceiling, you want the activity to be able to be, to go a lot deeper with it. And as we said, engaging hands-on and open-ended.
Yeah, so just one thing I want to touch on, this low entry level and high ceiling bit right there, that's hard. It's hard to find activities that are easy enough for kindergartners to jump into, and there's a high enough ceiling on that activity that high schoolers can run with it. We're going to give you some examples of that today, just so you can see what that looks like. But that's something that's really important to consider when
you're planning,
when you're building these activities. You don't want to limit the kids, but you also don't want to frustrate them or have them feel lost and confused. So
right.
It's that delicate balance between the two.
You want to give them a little bit of instant gratification while still teaching them perseverance and patience.
And this one here is a little bit controversial. People would disagree with me on this one, but we're making the stance that if you're really doing STEAM, you're combining at least two of those letters in STEAM. We were in a pretty high-profile meeting not too long ago where the question was, how do we improve STEAM opportunities? And people kept coming up with these answers like, well, let's add more time for science, or let's add more music into our day. And
that's not exactly what we're going for.
I was there scratching my head like, well, that's not STEAM. That's just adding more science. So more STEAM more science does not equal more STEAM. Once you start to combine science and engineering, or once you start to combine art and math, or once you start to combine technology and music, that's when we really get into our high quality STEAM.
Definitely. So what we have for you today, we have two activities in the STEM area, and we've got two activities in art and two activities in music. So these will give you some actual concrete lessons that you could go ahead and try at your library, but hopefully it also is kind of a springboard for you to come up with some new activities as well. And as we tell you about some stuff, if you've done things like that before, or you have some questions or extensions, feel free to join in, and we can chat about it as we go.
Yeah, and as we said in the very beginning, there's so many STEAM activities out there, so it's impossible to do them all or know them all. So if you know any, feel free to jump in. And this, by the way, this is a picture of the styrofoam cutter right there that we were talking about. That's the ones that we use, and styrofoam, and this kid and his Minecraft sword. So we're super psyched about making his Minecraft sword out of styrofoam. They're just too much fun. All right, so we're going to start off with our first activity here, which is DIY wind turbines. And this is a really neat opportunity for kids to combine science and engineering, also a bit of art in there. And it really gets at the STEAM skills of creativity, problem solving, and perseverance. We chose this activity for a variety of reasons. One of them, it is scalable. I've done this with kindergartners, and I'm actually doing it with um, high schoolers on Monday. I have 120 high schoolers that I'm leading a STEAM day for this coming Monday. And I'll be doing this activity with them. So it's definitely something that's scalable and it gets to a lot of these STEAM skills. So the goal with this activity is to design and build the most powerful and efficient wind turbine using the provided materials. Now, this little logo or this little graphic on the bottom here might be really hard to read. It's kind of tiny, but if you can read that, this is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and it states that the fastest growing occupations. And I like to play this little game with kids. What do you think the fastest growing occupation in the United States is? And believe it or not, it is a wind turbine service technician.
All right.
And if you look over here, the growth rate over the next 10 years, well, over the next 7 years now, but is 108%. And the median pay is pretty good too. It's $51,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Now, you compare that to occupational therapists, which is second there, at 43%. This is more than double the growth rate of the next fastest growing job. So it's a really cool tie-in to STEAM jobs too. STEAM jobs and STEAM careers are something that the schools are always pushing, that the politicians are always pushing, and for good reason. They're here to stay, and we definitely want to encourage kids and make them aware. So here's what it looks like. Your materials list is going to include a lot of the stuff you already have. If you have that your makerspace set up for these low-tech tools and toys, these options. You're gonna need some wooden and metal dowel rods, skewers, straws, and I'll let you guys read through the rest of this because I'm confident that you are readers. Mm-hmm. And the highest tech thing here is a fan. I'll be doing it with 5 fans on Monday, but 1 fan is fine for small. Now, here's what the process looks like. I like to start out by, talking about STEAM jobs, talking about the importance of STEAM jobs. This ties so perfectly to STEAM jobs because it is the #1 fastest growing job in America by a factor of 2. And it's just kind of a neat time. So here's your chance to get the science in there. We're going to discuss with the kids what a wind turbine does, how wind energy gets converted to electrical energy. This is an excellent opportunity to talk about renewable energy versus non-renewable energy, about energy transfer. There's a lot of different tie-ins you can make here related to science. Following that, you're going to introduce your challenge. You're going to tell the kids, all right, we're going to be designing our own wind turbines today. We're not going to be using these high-tech materials that our professional wind turbine service technicians get to work with every day. Mm-hmm. But we're going to be designing one that's strong and efficient. Now, here's where the scalability comes in. Or this is one of the places scalability comes in. Depending on the level of your students, the age, their background level, their general ability levels, you're gonna show the kids some samples about how to build a wind turbine. Now, we're going to point out more about this later, but this step here can look very, very, very different if you're teaching kindergartners and first graders, or if you're teaching 6th graders, 7th graders, 10th graders, whatever. Again, we'll talk more about scalability later. This here is the absolute most important part in just about any STEAM activity. And this is the thing that I think ultimately is missing most from what happens in the public schools when these activities are done, and that's time. We really have to allow our kids enough time to experiment, to test, to redesign. We have to allow them time to fail and then pick themselves up and redesign and succeed, because that's where the real learning occurs. That's where the real inquiry occurs. So this step right here is really what we can provide for them. In the setting that we can provide, this is the luxury that we have. We can plan our programs to be a little longer and give them more time to do this kind of stuff.
And it's important as a teacher to hold yourself back from stepping in and giving them the answers. It's all about the questions you ask to have them come up with the answers themselves.
Absolutely. So again, this testing part next, test all wind turbines, and here's how you would test to figure out that'll be the next two steps. But here's how you would set up a test to test which wind turbines are the most efficient. So you can set up a fan. I use 4 feet and attach the turbines one by one to an apparatus that allows them to spin freely. My apparatus, in case you're wondering, is I'll show you a picture of one in just a second here, but mine is a PVC pipe with a few holes drilled in it at different sizes, so they can put their wind turbine right in the middle, right through one of the holes in the PVC pipe, and it'll be able to spin freely. And here's how you test the power or efficiency. You're going to tie a string, and actually I'm going to skip to the next slide so you can actually see it. Here's the setup here. Here's your fan. Here's your wind turbine. Now this is different from mine. This is from a website called STEM Mom. I don't claim to take credit for this activity. This has been around for a long time. We just do a different variation of it. But here's your turbine. They use a tube so it can spin freely there. And then tied onto the back of the turbine, there's just a string taped to a cup. Now, the more efficient your turbine is, the easier it's going to be able to pick up this cup here. So you can add weight to this cup. You can add pennies, you can add marbles, you can add little weights if you have them, one by one, to see how much weight it can pick up. That's how you can kind of differentiate between which turbines are most efficient, most effective. Now, we use technology all the time, and yes, this is the low-tech presentation, the low-tech ideas, but we also want to give you guys some ideas as we go for some tech enhancements, and things that you may have just sitting around anyway. One of the things that I like to do with this is I like to use my iPhone. The iPhone actually works better because I think only the brand new iPads have slow-mo in them. So I use my iPhone, and we take a slow-mo video of the turbine spinning. And from that slow-mo video, we can count, how many rotations it makes in 10 seconds, or how many rotations it makes in 1 second or 2 seconds. And then we can use some math to actually figure out the speed, the RPMs. So it's a neat tie-in for math. It's a neat tie-in for technology, and just a way to get more mileage out of a single activity. This kids love. They really have a good time with this one, and it's a really good critical thinking, problem solving challenge.
And the Samsungs and such have the slow-mo capabilities as well. So if you don't have, yes. Just saying, I'm a Samsung. They all have, a lot of them have slow-mo capabilities as well, and the kids love it. It's really cool to see it. So the next thing we'll talk to you about are chain reactions and the Rube Goldberg machines. These are something that the kids love, and they can see everything play itself out, and you hear tons of cheering happening from the room as it's going on. So.
Oh, great question, Janet. The amount of time that you'd need. So it really does depend on the group, but I would say at the very minimum, you're going to want an hour and a half for it. That's going to allow the kids plenty of time to experiment and design. Now, you can trim in the beginning and you can trim in the end, especially if you have a younger group. What would be, I think, better is if you did it over the course of 3 or 4 hours, even if you did a weekly program and had the kids come every week for an hour, every week for an hour and a half. And then the first week, research, setup, background knowledge. The second week, building and testing. The third week, building and testing. The fourth week, then that's when they can actually, hook it up, test it. And if you want to turn it into a contest, we love competition. Not everybody does, but we turn it into a contest, reward creativity, reward efficiency, all those things. So yeah, I'd say 4 hours would do really well for that type of activity, but it could be done if you rush it in an hour and a half.
And I think, just as kind of an aside, I think a lot of teachers, and coming from the public school system, we definitely understand this, feel the need to over plan and pack things in because, oh my gosh, what if there's still time and you don't have something else planned for the kids. But I think it's really important to leave plenty of time for them to go deeper and to really explore. And if a little bit is repeated as they're if you do it in 2 separate classes like Ryan was saying, that's okay, because it's just like ingraining that knowledge in there and getting them more comfortable with it. So there's definitely a benefit to it.
Absolutely. So to take you into our next activity here, this is something, again, we get a lot of mileage out of this. We have kids that work on this, and it's a great way to practice perseverance, especially. That's why I started that one. But it also brings in engineering skill. It also brings in art in a lot of ways, and creativity too. So the goal is, if you're not familiar with the Rube Goldberg machines or just chain reactions in general, well, you're probably familiar with chain reactions, is to design a contraption that accomplishes a simple task in the most complicated way possible. So the materials list for this type of activity is anything and everything and anything, but there are some materials that you're going to use a lot more frequently than other things. Dominoes, popsicle sticks, solo cups, marbles, Legos, and cardboard. Those are things that we use lots and lots and lots of anytime we do chain reactions or Rube Goldberg machines. And we'll show you some pictures and some examples.
Yeah, Ava, we'll get that scheduled for you in a couple minutes. Maybe when I'm talking about the art stuff, Ryan can type up a little schedule for how to present the material.
Sure, and actually this presentation is going to be available on Swiftland's website when this is all said and done as well, and you'll be able to scroll through to the parts that you want as well. So, if you need to replay anything we said, the Swiftland makes that available for you guys after the presentation. So.
Awesome, good point.
And I'll still type it down if you want. So the process for our Rube Goldberg, introduce the concept of a Rube Goldberg machine. This is something that's really just silly. It doesn't have many ties to science if you don't want it to. It doesn't have many ties to the real world because generally we're trying to make things more efficient, not less efficient. This is a really neat opportunity to introduce iterative design, which is designing and testing one piece at a time and improving as you go. This is kind of the way of the world in engineering. You don't go for the finished product right off the bat. You do a smaller prototype, and then you build on that, and build on that, and build on that. This is really important thinking skills for kids, and it's also a good way to get them to kind of help them break things down into smaller, digestible bites, smaller chunks. You can also use a research component in here. I like to do that because there's a ton of ideas out there. There's so many YouTube videos out there that have different Rube Goldberg machines. And
Mousetrap.
Yep. Oh, yes, exactly. And even using, right, if you have the game Mousetrap, bring it in as an example for the kids. If you think about the engineering that went into building the game Mousetrap,
thanks, Chris.
So, we challenge our kids to make either the longest lasting chain reactions or the ones with the most different steps. And steps, I would say, is when anytime energy is transferred from one thing to another. So I don't include like each domino as a step, but if you go from dominoes to popsicle sticks to a Lego car to a ping pong ball to a book falling, all those different things we count as steps. And so you can kind of break that down however you want. Again, in terms of time, the more time, the better with this kind of thing. Although you're almost certainly going to reach a point where there are tears because dominoes
from
fall.
Us or from them.
Dominoes fall, and popsicle sticks. If you've ever done the popsicle stick chain reaction, the popsicle stick bomb, they go off without warning, and this is really a challenging process for kids. And again, that's where scalability comes in.
Teaches some grit.
Yeah, it teaches grit, teaches perseverance. It's fun for the kids. They really like it, but it does a really good job rewarding their perseverance. Let me show you some examples of what this might look like. So here on the top left, this is that popsicle stick bomb we were talking about. It's I think it's called the Cobra Weave. There's a few different names for it. Now you can make it infinitely long, but basically what happens when you release this side, there's a chain reaction and all these popsicle sticks go flying in the air really quickly. I have more slow-mo videos of this happening on my phone than almost anything. But the kids, once they get it down, it's so cool. Cardboard is a really valuable material. This is one of our students actually was doing this for a competition. He was setting up a cardboard ramp that a golf ball could roll down. Here's from that same competition, different group. The goal was to putt a golf ball into a hole. So here's their PVC contraption that holds up the golf club. This PVC thing breaks away and the golf club swings. Again, here's more ideas, just chain reactions, random materials, random things. and we have an ongoing contest with our kids to see who can create the longest chain reaction. So I think this group here, this wasn't it, but this group got one that was almost 30 seconds long, which is really impressive.
And remember that when we do these activities, in addition to teaching actual concepts and skills, it's also like just the whole STEAM mindset of getting kids to be creative and solve problems and think outside the box. And this activity definitely accomplishes that.
Excellent. I love it. The Wile E. Coyote Award. So just some tech enhancements for this activity here. You can let the kids use iPads or computers if you have them to research various designs. If you don't have them, then you can always print out a couple things ahead of time for kids. Just some thoughts, some pictures, some ideas. You can use this presentation as an example. Also, one thing I like to do is challenge the groups, and they kind of do this naturally anyway, but to create a video of their finished project. And there's a million different apps out there that you can use. iMovie is a really good one. To add cinematic effects and make their Loop Goldberg machine appear more dramatic. So they have a ton of fun with that. And if you end up with too much time, which is unlikely, there's always these tech enhancements you can add.
All right. So the next thing we have for you are a couple arts integrated ideas. So the ones I'm going to share with you today, we have an activity about reflection, and then the second one is about refraction. So this one, just the skills that we try to target here, we've got art, science, creativity, and design. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to use the principle of reflection, where light travels in a straight line, and then it hits an object and it bounces, it bends a different direction. So they're going to use that to create a piece of abstract art. Now, again, your materials are there on the left, and process-wise, there's a lot of exploration happening here before the actual art project takes place. Thanks, Deb. Awesome. So you're gonna start by talking about light and how it moves, and with letting the kids figure out the rules on their own. Explore shadows, go outside, look to see where the light is shining from, and then where the shadow goes, and move around and see how it changes. Have them create their own set of rules, and then take it to a flashlight and shine the flashlight on various objects. One thing that is really interesting with this, a smooth surface like a piece of glass is going to reflect the light differently than a piece of paper. You'd think a piece of paper is a hard surface, have it up against a book or something, but it's actually not. The granules and everything in the piece of paper, it's actually quite rough, and it reflects the light very, very differently. So for your art project, you take a piece of paper, lay it down on the table, and take a flashlight, and then a couple inches away put a mirror, and then you probably need partners for this. Someone can hold the piece of paper and the flashlight, and then the other person takes a pencil and traces the beam of light from the flashlight, and then where the light bends, going a different direction. So you have one there, and then you start in a different place on the paper, and you do another one, and you change the angle of the object it's reflecting off of, and you keep on doing this. Meanwhile, you're experimenting, and you're seeing the different ways that light moves. And then after you do that a bunch of times, you have lots of interesting shapes that these lines have created on your paper. So then you can color them. You can even plan it ahead of time and turn it into a bit of a pattern. So you color and use the angles to teach. You can teach mathematical concepts as well, and then you have a piece of abstract art when it's all said and done. And the down here, this link at the bottom, this has a lot of really this is where this this lesson came from, kind of like Ryan said, we don't take full credit for this one, but we take this lesson and we adapt it and we change it up for what we want to accomplish. But there's a lot of really good resources on this website, like visuals and videos about how light moves. So it's really helpful if you want to give this one a try. And tech enhancements for this one. Oh, here's a kind of a picture of light reflecting, and all the different things that you can try, things that you can hold up to experiment to see what happens. But for the tech enhancements, let kids use iPads or computers to watch the videos, like I mentioned, but then this one is fun. Use the light sensors on Little Bits or Lego Mindstorms to measure the intensity of the reflected light.
And my first Lego League, who was that? That's I forget. Sorry, I forget.
Can't remember who. Maybe Anna.
Anyway. But yeah, if you have your Lego Mindstorm set up, you can actually measure the intensity of the reflected light. I'm sure you know how to do that. If not, there's YouTube videos to do that, and that just kind of applies data to it. That applies a numerical value to the amount of reflected light, which makes it so much more real for the kids when they can attach that to it. One connection I like to make to this type of activity too is that it's kind of interesting that we're manipulating reflected light in this art project, but every art project, in fact, everything you see is reflected light. I mean, without reflected light, we'd see literally nothing. So it's kind of cool to think about. We're reflecting light in a customized way, but everything you see is reflected.
Yeah. So going a little bit more, we've got refraction, similar, but a different thing altogether. Refraction is how light goes through something. So again, this time we're going to take the principle of refraction and we're going to use it to manipulate a piece of artwork that they've already created. So for this one, take a good look at this picture here of the pencil and the penny, because that's the first thing that we're going to do. So there's it's the spear fishing activity. You put a penny in
My favorite.
Yeah, I've got a fisherman over here. You put a penny in a cup of water, and then you can take a piece of spaghetti or even a pencil and put it in the straw. You might need to cut the straw to make it a little bit bigger so the pencil fits in it. But basically, you hold the straw above and you try to let the spaghetti or the pencil drop through so it spears the penny, hence the spear fishing. What you will probably find, unless you've done this before, is that it's not where you think it is. You actually, because of refraction and the way the light bends as it goes through the water, it looks like it's in a totally different spot. So you've got to, plan ahead for that if you want to actually spear the penny fish.
And for those of you who have actually spearfished or done any bow fishing before, you know this. You can't actually aim at the fish. You have to aim just above the fish or just below the fish, depending on where you are. So it's really interesting to see this play out in a classroom setting, because most kids haven't gotten the opportunity to do that.
And so, some more exploration with that. Darken the room, put a glass of water on top of a piece of paper, and then, move the flashlight around so you can see how the light interacts. Draw the path of light from the flashlight through the water and then out again. So you start to see it in a more concrete way. You can do the same thing, shining light through an eyeglass lens. Really interesting things happen there as well. And then, the art tie-in, if you draw a picture, I like to relate it to the spear fishing one. You draw a picture, put it on the table, fill up a glass of water, put that on the table, bend down, look through the glass of water. You'll see that the picture flips. So the kids are fascinated by it, and it's a really cool way for them to physically see something happening that's kind of tough to conceptualize.
We've had our art teacher do this in a lot of different ways too. One of the ways she did this was she had the kids draw lines, and when you kind of view the lines through the glass of water at different angles, they bend and they move. And then what's kind of cool, a neat challenge for them, is to try to draw the lines so that when you look through the glass of water, they appear straight. And so, trying to find the right angle and the right angle of the lines and the right angle on the glass to try to get the lines to look straight. I think it's called a stereolithographic projection or something like that.
Yeah, cool. And as we're going, has anyone tried anything like this before? It's an interesting thing. Tech enhancements for this. Take pictures. Just like with a picture of the penny, you can see it too, and then you can look back. Not since their own middle school science. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that that we used to do, that now as we've been getting into more technology, we've gotten away from that, the hands-on stuff, and in place of the new technology. But it's really important to bring all that back, and like shop classes and things where people are learning how to do stuff on their own without technology. So that's it. Like you can take a picture of it so you can look at it and see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the light related activities. I mean, it's a great STEAM tie-in, and I think a lot of times people think it needs to be engineering and design, but not necessarily. Like we said, STEAM is getting a couple of those points, a couple of those disciplines linked in. So this definitely counts.
And Kevin, I'm glad you mentioned that too. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. Arduinos have modules that you can add in to measure reflected light intensity. You can do this with the new Ozobots, I believe, have a proximity sensor. They have light sensors.
Yep.
The MIP, the coder MIP, has a proximity sensor, a light sensor. So a lot of these things you can use to get a more concrete numerical value of how much light is there. I know the Lego Mindstorms would be really easy. Really not easy, but a really convenient way. If you have the experience with it, it would be a pretty.
You have our Lego Mindstorms robot programmed to solve a Rubik's Cube.
We took it.
All right. So
actually using light sensors.
Using light sensors, exactly. So you can go as low tech or as high tech as you want with these things. So a couple music integrated ideas now. This is one we've talked about before. If you've been with us before, you might have I might have mentioned it to you. But sound wave art. This is something that if you just teach kids about sound waves and label the different the different components of a sound wave, amplitude, wavelength, things like that, they can use that to create a piece of art. And there we go. So your materials list, very, very simple. Construction paper, glue, scissors, crayons and markers too, sorry. Label a sound wave and then draw various types of sound waves and turn that into a piece of art. Another extension I do is to turn it into a piece of 3D artwork where they draw the sound wave and then they cut it out, glue one end onto a piece of paper and then make the strip of paper, your sound wave, go up and then bend it down and tape it onto the piece of paper so that it goes 3D. Kind of makes like a horseshoe shape. And it's a concrete way to see a scientific principle. Now, if you want to expand on this, those are some of our not 3D pieces of artwork from some of our kids. The one that I think is really cool is this one. This girl used sound waves to show waves in the ocean and then lightning and the sky and the clouds. So she got really, really creative with this. I thought that was pretty awesome. And then this one is a little more abstract. But you can go on a sound wave scavenger hunt. There's an app called Oscillo. It's an oscilloscope app where basically you can just carry it around and make sounds into it. And
there's quite a few oscilloscope apps, but that's one of the ones we use.
Mm-hmm. So and and when you're making the sound, it shows you the sound wave. You can just take a screenshot of it. And so that's one way you can get a tech enhancement, or you can the kids can remember what it looks like and then draw it on their artwork. Okay, so the next music activity we have for you is Build a Band. So it's kind of like DIY instruments, but a different spin on So you use design principles to create instruments, basically. You're going to build them, but then you're also going to make an instrumental accompaniment to a song of your choice. Where this came from, this is something I love doing, and it's lots of fun and highly engaging for the kids. If you've ever seen those Jimmy Fallon skits where they're awesome, where he gets the Roots, he gets his band, and then they all play and then they all play songs on classroom instruments. They did one to Let It Go. Oh, they have tons and tons.
Sesame Street's a crowd gathered around here.
So for your first step, let's go into your process here. Your first step is you choose a song and you listen really carefully to that song, specifically for the sound of the percussion instruments. And you're going to guide them to find the sounds of like a shaker and a drum and scraper, sandblock. You're going to find those in most songs if you listen carefully. And by the way, I chose this activity because if you are a musician or you have some musical knowledge, you can go pretty far with this. You can write down the rhythms that they play and figure it out. But if you're not, you don't need to be. You can still just listen for the sounds and then build instruments that kind of sound like that. And then they just play along. They play what they hear. So lots of, depending on your experience level. But just a couple things that are, are going to work for you. Maraca, you can put beans or rice in a Dixie cup. A drum, take some wax paper or a balloon or something, and then, put that on top of a cup. To make a cabasa, you can take a bracelet. And a cabasa is that guy over here. All right, where are we? Right. This one. So you can take beads of a bracelet, and like this one, they actually put them around a can. You work to make it all soft, so it's not dangerous for the kids. Or you can just take the beads and you can put them, rub them against the edge of a table, and they'll make the same sound. And then you play along with your song, and the kids have a blast with it, and they learn a whole lot in the process. And for a tech enhancement, we have a projector, and we put the classroom instruments performance on the screen. And what I have them do is they glue their eyes onto one person in the band, and then I project it onto a whiteboard. So then I take a dry erase marker, and right near the instrument that whoever they're looking at is playing, we write the rhythm, like the quarter notes and the eighth notes. We write the rhythm that they're playing, so you can tie it in that way. Again, it's a big hit, and
Hillary does this almost weekly with our groups. And I think the kids love it so much because, one, a lot of kids without music experience, they know that music it takes a lot of work until you're good and can actually produce something that people want to hear. Well,
that scares a lot of kids.
It does, and this is that it almost plays to that instant gratification. The kids can actually make something that sounds pretty cool in a relatively short amount of time. And the right guidance is everything there. It takes a little bit of practice, but we've heard them, and we have videos on our YouTube channel that you can check out.
Yeah.
On our YouTube channel.
Yeah. Upload them. Yeah. All right. Makerspace Management 101.
So before we wrap up here, one of the last things we're going to leave you with here is, we're teachers. That's what we are. That's our career. And so along the way, we've been taught, and we've used, and we've come up with some tips for effective and stress-free lessons. And really, 50% of teaching, it has nothing to do with the content or your knowledge level. It's the management of the students. It's how we make the students, engage. It's how we keep everybody on focus, on task, and having fun. So. Differentiating or scaling. If you're in the classroom setting, you've probably heard the word differentiating. We like to use the word scaling. It's essentially the same thing. But there's a couple different ways to do it. And I'm going to give you an example going back to the wind turbine activity. So you can scale content. And what that means is you're either teaching more or less of a topic. You're either going into less detail or more detail. If you have a younger group, you'll do less. If you have an older group, you'll do more. Seems kind of obvious, but it's something that you want to plan for. Now, process. If you have a younger group or if you have a less experienced group, you're going to want to go about it much differently. You're going to want to build or create the project much differently than if you have an older group. Scaffolding. Scaffolding is, helping the students break the process down into smaller chunks, into digestible bites, things they can do. If you give them a big long-term goal and they're too young, it's going to end poorly 99 times out of 100. But if you break it down into smaller pieces for them and help build them up, help scaffold them, then it's going to go much better. For older kids, more advanced kids, we can give them that more creative freedom. And again, all with one activity, you can change the process many ways. You can also adjust the product or the end goal for a wind turbine, and I'll show you guys in a minute. Your wind turbine for a kindergartner is going to look differently than a wind turbine for a high schooler. And in the setting we're working in, you're likely to have kids of varying age levels and ability levels. And effective management is the key to a successful and smooth lesson every time. So just for reference here, if you wanted to scale the content of a wind turbine activity here, yes, I hear you. For scaffolding, it didn't make sense to me for the longest time until I kind of came up with my own little. Thank you. So for K2, these kids are not going to have a lot of background knowledge, so that you're not going to want to use overly technical content-specific vocabulary. You're going to lose them. They're going to get bored. They're going to lose interest. In fact, the background knowledge building piece is going to be important before you do this. More so for K2. At 3-5, you might be ready for some content-specific vocabulary. They'll be ready to make connections, more ready to make connections between renewable and non-renewable energy types. That's what these kids are prepared to do. And at this age, then you can release them for more independent research. This is where you can get into the more technical knowledge about how wind energy can be converted to electrical energy. So that's what it might look like if you're differentiating or scaling content. For process, again, it's going to look different for K2. When you're differentiating or scaling process, these K2 students, they might not even have the dexterity to build the pieces that you need to build. You might have to pre-prepare some parts or pieces for them.
You definitely be prepared for that. That's something that can easily trip you up if they don't have the fingers to make it happen.
This can cause a lesson to come screeching to a halt here. Breaking it down into simpler steps for younger kids or less experienced kids, scaffolding, is absolutely essential to making these kids feel successful in the end. If you kind of guide them through to a set working design and then say, okay, from here, I want you guys to customize. I want you guys to see if you can make this more efficient, make it work better, make it spin faster, make it look cooler, but give them a chance to customize in the end. 3-5, don't give them so many step-by-step directions. Let them kind of decide which direction they want to go in after showing them some examples. And for 6th grade and up, they might be ready for, hey, here's the end goal. You have a blank slate, tabula rasa, and go for it. Yep. And then finally, scaling the product. Expect different things of K2 that you would of 6+. And again, this seems obvious, but it's something that so often gets forgotten in the process of planning a lesson. We see a lesson plan online, it says to do it this way. We think, all right, I'm going to do it that way without thinking about how we're scaling it. So,
and something I want to just interject here. There's many times when we're teaching a STEAM activity that we have kids within the same group of varying ages. We might have a kindergartner. We try to keep them separate, but sometimes it happens that a kindergartner is in the same group as a 4th grader. So that presents an interesting challenge of, doing all of these things, scaling the content, process and product simultaneously, but it is doable. You let everyone work together, give everyone different jobs, and maybe the kindergartner is in charge of the wind turbine that spins when the fan is on, and then the other one has a different goal.
So with K2, your product, just have the kids make something that spins. That's going to be an accomplishment for our younger groups, especially kindergartners. 3rd through 5th, then that's when we start to say, all right, well, let's see how much weight we can pick up. Let's take this to the next level. And then once you get higher up into the upper grades, we can do the same thing, but factor in the cost of materials and weight and aesthetics for more realistic real-world applications. We don't want to overload the young ones with too much. So a couple resources that we've used in this presentation, a couple links for you to reference. There's some neat websites that just have cool lessons. Again, these aren't going to be all scaled for you. So that's where it's going to take, the teacher skill in you to scale them and make them appropriate for your group. But here's some good links and some good references. Here's a couple good websites especially if you're working in a school library. These are linked. These are tons of lessons and ideas that are linked to state standards and resources. Now we use a lot of technology, which so I don't often reference this site because it has a lot of low tech things. But that's perfect for this presentation because, well, there it is. It's low tech and mostly easy to use, easy to do, standards linked activities. So just to summarize here, what happened there? Just to summarize here, giving kids STEAM opportunities is an essential part of a well-rounded education, and we're a huge part of that. Libraries are the ideal home for STEAM programs to engage the community. Technology is great, but it's definitely not necessary. It's not required to create a high-quality STEAM environment. STEAM ideas and resources are everywhere, but good ones are hard to find. Use that vetting process to make sure that you're presenting good STEAM ideas and resources. Great STEAM ideas are scalable, engaging, and encourage multiple skills, like we've talked about. And that scaling and differentiation piece will make STEAM accessible to a broader range of ages, and it's going to make your lessons move much better.
Oh, and just real quick, the math lesson that I was talking about, there's music is fractions. So if you're doing the bedtime math, feel free to try to get some of the math concepts in there with music. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us, and I can help you out and give you some more ideas on that. We kind of ran out of time. I was going to give you more, but 1 hour is a short amount of time to get to a lot. So thanks everyone, and we hope you enjoyed.
Thank you guys very much. And we hope to see you. We hope to see you guys again in person at the workshops or at our next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Ryan and Hillary, for a wonderful webinar. Some information and a sneak peek of what is coming up. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, be sure to join us on February 16th here at the Fort Myers office for 2 half-day workshops, Back to Basics, Getting Started with STEAM in the morning, and Starting a Makerspace with Technology in the afternoon. Also, please join us on Friday, February 3rd for our next diversity webinar, D is for Developing Cultural Competence. On Tuesday, February 7th's webinar, Did You Ref Academy, Health and Medicine, Am I Dying? Launching an idea from concept to crowdfunding, funding your startup on February 9th, and Accessibility Points, A is for Accessibility, on February 10th. We encourage you all to look at the upcoming webinars and workshops in months ahead, and hope you're all able to join us for future training opportunities. As always, please feel free to keep checking the Swiftland CE calendar on our website, our Swiftland Facebook page, or look for your message from the Florida Library listserv. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a wonderful weekend.